What's up everybody, Mike here doing a vlog today, the first vlog in the new Duramax, and we are taking the truck to get a good wash down to get all of this lovely salt off from the awesome snow that you can see off to the left and the right. And you know, to a lot of the viewers from other states and other places in the world saying, oh, snow is fun. Yeah, snow is fun for about all of 5 minutes, and then you're like, wow, this really sucks. And the salt and everything else that comes around with snow, trust me, you do not want snow where you live, I promise you that. So I wanted to talk today about why I decided to go with a Duramax when I was looking for a new truck, because I get this question a lot. Well, not really questions, more or less comments, like, why didn't you buy a Cummins? Why didn't you buy a Powerstroke? So, you know, no doubt when it comes to trucks, and especially diesel trucks, everybody has their different preferences. You know, there's different groups. You got your diehard Duramax fans, diehard Powerstroke guys, and diehard Cummins fans. And you know, I don't really necessarily fall into any of those groups, I would say. My first truck that I ever bought, way back, my first vehicle actually, was an '89 Chevrolet K1500, whatever. And it was four-wheel drive, but only 3 of them worked for whatever reason. And I bought it for like $1,200, and that was just because like I was in high school, I had like $1,000 to spend on a truck, and I just bought the first one that was halfway decent. It wasn't like completely rusted to hell. So that was my first pickup truck, and I've owned Chevrolets ever since. So that would be the first reason, is definitely because I'm just familiar with Chevrolet pickups, and especially this one. This is a 2005. It's almost exactly like, well, it is. It's exactly the same as my 2006 Silverado that I sold in order to buy this. So, you know, I was really comfortable with it, and I've had a great experience with these trucks. They've been super reliable to me, and I've beat the crap out of them, to be honest. I am not gentle on them whatsoever, and not the more traditional truck sense, like most people do, like hauling stuff and towing and things like that. I don't do any of that stuff, but I off-road them, which is really not what they're supposed to be used for at all. And like, you know, they can be, but like I go, like in my other truck, I was running in sand dunes at like 60 miles an hour on a completely stock drivetrain pickup truck and everything. So, you know, I would say that I'm pretty rough on my vehicles, whether it be in the sand, in the mud, doing whatever. So even like minor, small rock climbing. So, and again, not like real rock climbing. If any Jeep guys are watching this, I'm not claiming to be a rock climber, okay? But, you know, I'm pretty rough on them, and they've always held up really well. So I guess I just have a really good thought about Chevy trucks in my head, and I think a lot of people are like that. You know, when you talk about brand loyalty, it's not probably so much that people are loyal to the brand, it's just that they're familiar with it, so they're less likely to switch it up. You know, as human beings, we kind of like, we don't like change a whole lot, especially once we find something that we like to stick with it. And why not? You know, if you like everything about it, it's a lot easier to stick with it and to keep something that you're used to rather than try to switch over to something new. So I think that's honestly where a lot of like brand loyalty comes from. So, you know, just the fact that I'm familiar with this truck was a huge reason, but the other big factor was just my search criteria was really, really limiting. And I'll be the first one to admit that I was super picky about trucks. Like, I wanted a diesel truck that was under 50,000 miles, which is really hard to find. Now, you might be saying, well, no, it's not hard to find, just buy one, buy a newer one. But I wanted to stay under 30,000 bucks. And, you know, the reason for that, it is kind of a random number, but my old truck was worth roughly about 20 grand. It was a low mileage 06, you know, and trucks hold their value super well. So I wanted to spend about 10 grand out of pocket, and that's pretty much what I wanted to stay around. So, you know, 30,000 bucks, trying to find a diesel with under 50,000 miles. I didn't want something real old either. You know, maybe you could find one that was like a 90-something diesel and it had super low mileage for whatever reason, but I didn't want to go too old, you know, and especially going back to what I said earlier, you know, I really like this body style, and which I'm going to get to in a second, but the fact that I wouldn't want to go backwards with the interior, if that makes any sense. Like, I wouldn't want to, I'm okay with sticking with the same interior, which this is, but I wouldn't want to go, you know, even farther back and like even less and have less nice creature comforts and stuff. So, you know, sticking with this interior was I think was the right decision for me. So apart from that, you know, the search criteria was probably the biggest reason, just because, you know, trying to find a diesel with low mileage is tough to begin with, and then trying to find one for the right price. Like, there were a few that came up that were the right mileage and everything, and I liked them. You know, I was looking for kind of a mid-2000s era, just because I like these old school, a little bit of the older interior, you know, not a whole lot to break, not a whole lot to go wrong, and I was, again, really comfortable with it. So, and, you know, I'm not going to spend, going back to the money thing for a second, I'm not going to spend a ton of money on a truck when I use it for stuff, you know, like I put my dogs in it and all kinds of stuff. Like, I would never get a brand new leather interior truck and spend 50 grand on it for my purposes. Now, if I was going to drive it every day, take it on a bunch of long trips, then maybe I would get something like that. But for my purposes, I kind of wanted to stay a little bit older, a little bit cheaper. So the search criteria was the most limiting factor, and honestly the biggest reason why I chose this. And there were some other trucks that came up, like looking at Powerstrokes for a second. Like I said, I'm not necessarily opposed to any specific brand. I would have gone with anything, but the Ford trucks from this era, a lot of the ones that were in my price range and fell into the right criteria was the 6.0 Powerstroke. And I'm sure that if you take care of that engine and you do everything right, it would last forever. But I have heard so many nightmare stories about the 6.0, and I just didn't want to risk it. So that might sound bad from any diehard Ford fans out there, but I just didn't want to risk it. And this has its issues as well. This is an 05 Duramax, so it's an LLY Duramax, not as good as the LBZ Duramax that came in 2006. So this has its issues too. Now, I'm planning on doing the modifications to it that should negate those issues, but we'll see. These have been prone to injector issues, I've heard, and as well as overheating issues too. So hoping those things don't come up, but it's a risk I took. If I'm being totally honest, the best engine, in my opinion, is the Cummins. I think it is. I think the straight six, well, I guess it's actually an inline six. You guys know what I'm talking about. I think that's the best design, and especially the brand Cummins. They know what they're doing. That is the diesel engine brand. So engine-wise, gotta be honest, even though I'm driving a Duramax, I think the Cummins is the best engine out there. As far as transmissions are concerned, I would say the Allison is the best. So, each truck has its pros and cons of things that each one does really well and each one does better than the other. And for me, with the search criteria in mind and everything that I was looking for, the Chevy was a really good mix. The third and final reason, if I'm being totally honest, is just because I love the looks of these trucks. And again, maybe it's because I'm just familiar to them, but I gotta be honest here, and I know it sounds like I'm bashing Ford throughout this whole video, but I'm really not. I'm not that guy to pick a brand and just be a fanboy here. But the mid-2000s Fords, I'm not a huge fan of. I love the Dodges, I love the Duramaxes, but I'm just not a fan, or Chevys in general. I'm just not a fan of the way the mid-2000s era Fords look that much. Now, I've seen some awesome ones, and again, it's all about what you do to it in the aftermarket. You can make even the ugliest truck look good if you do the right things to it. So, I'm sure it could have been made to look good, but out of the box, just as they are, love the look of Cummins and love the look of Duramaxes, not so much the Fords from that era. And there actually was a really cool Cummins that I was looking at. It was a 2004, had like 30,000 miles on it, super clean, and the reason I didn't end up buying it, I was really close. And the reason why was because it was black, and I didn't want a black truck. So again, I was being super picky. But anyway, I'm glad that I ultimately waited, because this truck really fulfills every need that I wanted, everything that I was looking for, and I'm definitely really happy with it. So that is going to pretty much do it for why I decided to go with this 2005 Duramax when I was on the hunt for a new truck. I was very familiar with these trucks. I love the way they look. I'm very confident in the reliability of the drivetrain and everything. And most importantly, it was just the right truck at the right time for the right price. So as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Always appreciate it. If you're stopping in for the first time, please subscribe. Take care. Have a great day.